Hi all, I'm Neelam Chand and I feel energized because I was invited by Redemption Bank and Women's Leadership Institute to celebrate and spotlight the new face of leadership. I have the opportunity to interview exceptional women leaders who have carved their own career paths and in unconventional ways. It isn't about perfect resumes, it's about the real path, the pivots, the doubts, the unexpected turns, and how women actually build leadership in the world that we live in today. My hope is that if you're listening and feeling stuck or uncertain or behind, you'll hear something today that reminds you that leadership doesn't have one template. It has many, and often it looks a lot like you. Emily Bell McCormick, thank you so much for being here.
So happy to be here.
I so appreciate you. I'm excited to talk to you. You're the founder of the Policy Project, a nonprofit that creates movements in order to forward healthy long-term policies. We'll get into that a little bit more. But what's interesting is your resume doesn't necessarily scream policy founder.
No, it doesn't at all.
You've had a clothing company, you've worked for TV communications, you have 5 kids. When did you realize that your path was actually potentially in preparation for policy? Like, what got you there?
Yeah, it's such a good question because you're absolutely right. I mean, I was kind of all over the map. And I think, when you're 20 and making decisions about your future, you have such limited exposure, and you have to decide what you're going to jump into, but you don't always know yourself yet. And so I would say, exactly what you hit on. This idea that like every single step I took led me a little bit closer to where I needed to be. And this is absolutely where I need to be. I spent some time, in college. I did journalism and some strategic communication and ended up founding a clothing company, selling that, and going into consulting. And I would say all along this path, I had this constant theme in my life that was just like, I want to be involved in something bigger than myself. And I want to make sure that the world is not the exact same as I found it, that it's going to be a little bit better because I've spent time on earth. And so that sounds like so deep, but it really was just accumulation of those moments of thinking like, I need to give back. I've been given a lot and I would like to do something more for the world.
Yeah, so you really wanted to make change in the world, and policy is the one way to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to see change, that's where you want to dive into. So it makes sense. So then tell me this. Now you're in this career. You walk into rooms where you're asking legislator to talk about menstrual equity, abuse, homelessness, in a very conservative state of Utah. What's your strategy when the room is resistant? How do you reconcile that? And then second part of that question is, when you walk away from all that exertion, how do you then come back to yourself?
Yeah,
2 parts.
That's such a good question. So I would say, when I decided to pursue policy, a part of the thing that was like so attractive about it was during those other phases of my career, when I was doing fashion or consulting or, doing TV stuff, I was also trying to figure out in the back of my head, how do we go upstream of society's biggest problems? Like, how do we look at something like homelessness and say like, yes, someone needs to build a shelter for people that are unhoused without a question.
Yeah.
But someone also needs to be looking at what happened earlier in this person's life that put them in a position that they're experiencing homelessness today. And so as I was kind of grappling with like, how do we solve for issues upstream and what tools can we use? I did trip upon this idea of policy. Policy is so cool because you can intersect at any point in a problem and really make a shift there. So it was not like easy, but it's easier to kind of go upstream and say like, hey, we're going to look at some of these issues that really exacerbate some of society's biggest problems, like homelessness, like incarceration, like substance abuse, or the inability to stay in relationships. Some of these things are like so sticky and so hard to solve for. And I realized like, okay, policy is a good way to do that. So that was kind of the entree into the idea of policy. And then, like you're saying, we've dealt with some topics that are like, people don't want to talk about, people don't want to talk about periods. People don't want to talk about, definitely not child sexual abuse. That one is so difficult. And I think it was just from the get-go, having a willingness to share a perspective without making an assumption that the person on the other side of the table from where I was sitting was trying to hold me back by not doing something about it in the past. So I'll use this example. When we worked on the very first initiative we worked on was around period poverty, and this idea that like women and girls, they did not have access to period products. And here in the United States, which often if you've grown up with any level of comfort, we don't think it's a problem here. But the reality was 8 in 10 girls had missed school because they didn't have access to period products. About 1 in 4 of our teenagers here in the state of Utah can't afford period products at all. And so it's like, okay, that wasn't my experience actually growing up. I grew up middle class. That wasn't my experience. But it is the experience of many, many, many girls and women in the state of Utah. And so I think, going into these spaces that may not naturally ever talk about these issues, I had to go in with a mindset like, obviously, this is such a shared, like anytime any human is suffering, we all share it to some degree, whether or not we recognize it, And so when I first went in to talk about periods, I remember sitting across from a legislator. It was a male. It was my first meeting. And I was so nervous because I just had never met, I don't know, this legislator might as well have been like the president of the United States. Cause I was just like, I'm not familiar here. I feel really uncomfortable. But I remember chatting with him and kind of talking about this issue and saying, this is something that we can do better for our state. It's such an inexpensive way if we put period products in schools, this is like a very inexpensive way to make a huge change for our girls. And I remember him kind of hesitating, like, yeah, but is that the role of government? And it was like, okay, fair question. But the reality is the government has leaned in on things like providing toilet paper in bathrooms, providing hand soap, right? We've decided that these things are big enough to society, like for society and the welfare of all of us, that we're going to intervene. And so I remember him kind of being like, yeah. And then it took me getting really personal and saying, I'm loving this meeting, but here I am sitting in this white chair in your office. And we both know that if I started my period, which is spontaneous, and I stood up and I left the room, we would both feel awkward. Yeah. Like, I'm going to feel really awkward, but
now all of a sudden it's your problem too.
Yeah. And it was just a really great moment. And to his great credit, he heard that, and he was like, oh my gosh, yeah, that would be so awkward. It's awkward enough that we're talking about it. And so I think there was just like this beautiful moment of like shared humanity where it was like, that would be awkward for me, but it's also really uncomfortable for you. It's uncomfortable for all of us. And I think that like going into these meetings and these conversations where there might be people that you think are naturally going to be against something, or maybe it's hard to prioritize this when you've got so many other demands. Like we need to build roads and we need to build universities and we need to build all these other things. How do we prioritize period products? How do we prioritize kids that have been harmed, by adults who should be loving them and instead they're hurting them? How do we kind of bring those conversations to a place where we have to recognize our shared humanity? And so I think for me, it's about going into those spaces with like, surely you understand because you're human too.
Right.
We both suffered, maybe not the same things in life, but we both have, and we understand that. And it's our job as the adults in any room to take care of it.
So taking these concepts that some people find very out there.
Yeah.
It's our daily lives for some, but for others, it may be feeling like it's unreachable or it's just not something that resonates, and you bring it in, you normalize the conversation, you humanize it.
Yes.
And that gets people to move towards you rather than this resistance. Yeah. So that's a skill.
Yeah. And you're exactly right. That's exactly what it is. It's just making it feel like there is I think one thing that happened, especially historically in policy, because policy is very different from politics. Politics are kind of partisan. Policy is just the way that we use rules and systems to like create the society that we live in. And I think the way that had been treated in the past was very much like, there are some things we just don't touch. Like, this is not the appropriate place to talk about things that are dirty, like periods, or that are dirty, like, abuse in certain forms. It's just, we don't talk about that here. It's not appropriate. Yeah. But the reality is, if a human is experiencing it, there is no place that is sacred. No. We are all beholden to the suffering of another human. And so we need to be able to bring that into those spaces and make it our problem.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
let's make this our problem because we can actually all together, we can solve it.
Yeah. And then just dropping the shame around it, the shame around those
Exactly.
conversations
Yep.
is really important as well.
Yeah.
So, wow.
And you imagine a future, like I think periods already, we're seeing such good outcomes with girls, in high school, they'll say like, oh yeah, I just like grab, I just told my friend who's guy sitting next to me, I got to run to the bathroom because I started my period. I'm like, I never would have done that.
No.
I still probably wouldn't.
No.
I talk about periods all day long and I still would be like, so I think there's like something beautiful about shifting the culture when we just normalize human things.
Yep. So with that said, policy work is slow.
Yes.
I don't know how you have the patience, but yeah, okay. Change oftentimes can fail many times before it actually reaches change.
True.
And people will disappoint you. So how do you stay emotionally intact when the stakes are so high?
Yeah. I that's a great question, especially for right now. We're in the middle of a legislative session and there's a lot of frustration that can happen, especially when people don't see things the way that you see them, or if you're trying to align on something or someone values something different more that you might even think or know isn't going to be nearly as impactful as what you're bringing to the table. It can be really hard. And I am for sure not the expert at regulating. I mean, I will say I say a fair number of curse words every day. Feels good. Got to get it out of the system. Just let it loose. A little bit of therapy. But I think part of it is kind of recentering and regrounding in like, this is bigger than me. It's so much bigger than me. It never was just me.
Yeah.
This was all of us. And this is work that needs to be done by all of us. No one can, I say in a place that I love, which is being able to lead it for now. But I also really realize that there will be other people when I'm gone that need to lead this. And that's a very important thing for me, is to remember that I'm just like a tiny piece of what needs to happen in this world. So many people are doing things parallel to this, and we need to be working in this space of policy and all the other spaces. So I would say it's kind of trying to keep that perspective of like the thing we always battle as humans, where it's like, it's everything to you and the frustration is everything, to me in the moment. But the reality is I'm also like nothing, you know what I mean? Like this is just a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
And so kind of trying to balance those feelings almost makes me feel more persistent about it. Like, oh, I'm not going anywhere because this is it's a long fight. It's a long game,
Yeah. So do you, how do you release that energy then? Because yes, I love the way you say that you kind of separate your identity from what you're fighting for to some extent, even though you have the passions coming out of you, you're able to separate because you know that this is a lot bigger than you. But then where does that energy go? Because I can imagine if you're getting pushback or if you're told no, or if someone says an offhand comment that is completely against your values or what you're fighting for, what do you do?
It's hard.
How do you?
This is funny and this is like very tactical, but I'm a super physical person. And literally, I mean, you can talk to people on my
You punch people?
I quite literally have to like go and like do squats in the hall or just like, or at night, if I'm had a really bad
that
day,
energy needs to come out.
On like big, like noise canceling headphones, go in my basement. I will just dance. It's like my kids walk down and they're like, "Oh, Mom, you're so embarrassing." And I'm like, "Oh, I know. I don't care. I gotta get
out."
Literally, I have to like get it out of my actual body because it will get just trapped, you know, and I'll get so anxious about things. And it's like, if I can kind of push it out in a physical way, that's super helpful for me. And then I think I'm also just an expresser. I got to talk about it a little bit, and tell someone where it's like, I can say whatever I want, not going to be held accountable, but for like the terrible things I say, and then I pull my crap back together and I can go back in,
Yeah.
So I think it's like a balance between, but I definitely do. I'm not one to suppress things. I definitely do kind of
release them.
Get it out.
Yes.
Yep.
So important. It's so important.
Yeah.
So for women who feel stuck but want to have real impact, what would you suggest a first move could be where it matters for them?
I think it's a really good question. I see this all the time because I'm kind of in, I'm like what is it? Midlife crisis, midlife.
You and I both. Yeah.
Yeah. And I see women kind of transitioning either out of having kids, or maybe they had a career and now they're wanting to do something with more meaning. I think it's a very common experience for women and men. And I think for me, the first thing that I would do is try to identify if someone is already doing something that you find passion in, because there's so many good nonprofits out there, right? Women's Leadership Institute, the Policy Project, like there are so many people doing such beautiful things, and they need support in the things they're doing. So I think sometimes we think, well, I have to start my own thing. And yeah, for sure, that's absolutely an option. But I think the best first step is to just say, is there someone out there that kind of aligns with my values and what I want to do in my life? And can I offer some of my like gifts, talents, time to that cause? Because I think, we all need that.
Yeah.
And so I think a first thing would be just do like a little landscape survey, see what's out there, see if anything speaks to you, and then reach out and make something happen. Volunteer, go to an event, do something just to take that first step to get involved.
Yeah, so you don't have to reinvent anything, and you can maybe even see where the gaps are, and then from there you can move forward.
Exactly.
Rather than feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Totally agree.
And then your upbringing, your childhood was very interesting to read about. I'm curious because I feel like a lot of young women. I think leadership looks so different today.
Oh, it really does.
And so
different.
When we grew up, we looked at leadership and we thought, white male CEO in a suit, and we've seen pictures of it. We've seen, we have this picture in our mind. Yeah. I feel like young girls growing up now, it's different. So if you were to travel back in time and talk to your little you, whatever age that looked like, where maybe it was the most challenging, what would you say to her at this moment?
Yeah, I love that question. I think it's really interesting because I grew up in a time and in a community. It was such a beautiful community in so many ways. Like it was a tight-knit community. One thing that I did not see was I didn't see women out of the home. And there are many, many, many benefits to women being in the home or men being in the home and raising their kids when they're young. I just didn't have a lot of exposure to women working outside the home. And so I remember feeling anxious about that and a little bit of conflict around like, that probably would never be appropriate for me to work outside the home. And this is funny, but there was this old movie called Big Business that had this actress, Bette Midler, in it. And she like lived in the city and she wore these great outfits and, she smoked, all the good things, and just looked like, would go into this office and like run this business. And I remember just always being like, I want to be a CEO. I didn't,
you didn't know entirely
one single film, but I remember kind of seeing that, but then thinking like, oh, that's bad. I shouldn't feel that way. And that's just kind of interesting to consider now, because like you said, the world is really different for my daughters than it was for me. And so I think if I could go back and tell myself one thing, it would be like, life is long and you're like, listen to like your natural talents, like look at your natural talents, consider like that little voice inside of you and what she feels like she needs to do. Yeah. Anytime it comes to like helping other people, do it. Do not hesitate. Help the other person. And that might take the form of being the CEO of something. Yeah. And helping people that way. And that's wonderful and good and okay. You can still be a mom and love your family and do those things. I think if I could kind of convey that message, it would have saved a ton of heartache for me.
What would she say to you now?
I think she would say, wow, I didn't think you'd actually do this.
She's like, you are that woman.
Wow, good. Go buy yourself a suit.
Yes. Get that cigarette, yeah.
No, don't smoke. Smoking is bad. But I do think she would probably be kind of surprised at how like the most inner part, I would say it's like the deepest part of me is the work that I do through the policy project. And to be able to have that expression in my life and have other amazing humans come and join it and be a part of it like sometimes I have to pinch myself because I can't believe that I get to do this every day. It's such a gift to be able to be in a position to try to better your community. It's such a gift.
Wow.
So I love it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I think she would be very proud.
Yeah. Thank you.
And so your last question, if you could just finish the sentence, a different kind of leader is someone who blank.
I would say a different kind of leader is someone who looks around herself, who notices other people, sees their strengths, sees their weaknesses, sees where they thrive, and sees where they're in pain. Because I think if we can kind of look at the people around us and we can figure out like how to help people rise to the best of themselves, like their best inner self, that's the best kind of leader, right? Yeah. I don't need to create the world for you and you don't need to create it for me. But if I can create a world that like honors who you are, you're going to go make magic happen.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's one thing when you said in the beginning, leadership looks a lot different than maybe how we pictured it 20, 30 years ago. For sure it does. And I think one of those, like a point of recognition is it's actually being a leader is like weirdly not about you.
No.
It's about how much can you help other people thrive in their environment.
Yeah.
That's really leadership because it's so much bigger than you if other people are thriving. It's one thing if I'm just thriving, but then if my team is excelling, if they're all like doing their best, it's like all this work is unstoppable.
Yeah. Thank you. What you're saying is, leadership is rooted in humanity. It's recognizing one another. It's collective. It's not one person. It's not one person owning everything. It's really, truly connecting with people on a deeper level. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.